Hello my dear students, how are you? I hope you are doing well. So again we are here with a new science chapter, breathing in organisms, respiration in organisms. So here we are going to start with this chapter, and this is really very interesting chapter because it deals with some of the important processes that we actually observe in our life. So let us start with this chapter, respiration in organisms, and here what we are going to discuss. Let us see. So here in this chapter we'll talk about the introduction part, why do we respire, breathing, that means what is breathing, how do we breathe, then we'll talk about and discuss the breathing in different animals, then we'll talk about breathing underwater, that means how fishes breathe, how different aquatic animals breathe, and then we'll discuss a little bit about do plants also respire. So are you guys ready with this? Let us start with this chapter. So here when we talk about the introduction, we have a topic that is breathing. So basically you observe when you do not walk, when you are comfortably sitting on a chair, your breath's normal. That means your breath rate is very normal. But suddenly you start walking and suddenly you start brisk walking and you start running. What will happen? You realize that your breathing increases suddenly, your breath rate increases. So what we can say that the running makes you breathe faster, definitely the breath rate increases. Have you ever observed? Doing nothing, normal breathing rate. Doing some physical exercise, brisk exercise, it increases your breathing rate. So breathing is nothing a part of respiration. Now the question is, why do we respire? Why this respiration important? So answer is very simple. We respire to get energy from food. We know that plants prepare food by the process of photosynthesis. And this prepared food in plant is in the form of glucose. So any food item which is present in the body, it is utilized to give energy, and that is the role of respiration. Here also when we eat some food, we need to get energy from food. So we respire to get energy from food, and here is the respiration process comes. Basically when we talk about food, it contains some stored energy in it. It has some energy and we need to take out that energy. You know that we need food just to perform our life activities, to get energy. If you do not eat for longer, like when you are coming from school to home, you suddenly ask, Mom, I need some food because I am hungry. Your metabolic actions, processes going slower. Why this is so? Because when you do not take food, which is actually a source of energy, your body needs energy. So here we are going to discuss about that food contains some stored energy in it. So when we respire, this food is broken down in the cells of our body. It reaches to each and every part in the form of energy. With the help of oxygen, when we respire, we inhale oxygen, it goes into the body, helps in the breakdown of that complex food, and finally we get energy. So this is how energy is released, and this is the importance of respiration. So this is how, why do we respire? We need to take energy from food. So this is the structure of cell, you can see. We have already studied in previous classes structure of cell. What is cell basically? It is nothing but the smallest structural and functional unit of an organism. And here this cell produces energy when decomposition of food, complex food takes place. So here these are different cell organelles present in a cell, starting from the cell wall which makes the outer covering, then we have nucleus, inside nucleus we have nucleolus, endoplasmic reticulum, centrosomes, Golgi body, lysosomes which we call as suicide bags, mitochondria which we call as powerhouse of the cell, then microtubules, cell membrane, another membrane of the cell, cytoplasm, the contain the cell sap of the cell, and ribosomes. So all these are the cell organelles and they perform very important functions in the cell. So here is the structure of cell, which is nothing but the smallest structural and functional unit of organism. Now, if I ask you, what is the function of this cell? The cell helps in giving nutrition, it helps in transport of substances, it helps in excretion of waste products, it helps in reproduction. So it's this single cell, this is small cell, performs many functions, either in the form of nutrition or in the form of transport or excretion or reproduction. All these are the functions performed by a cell, or sometimes group of cells that we call tissues. So when we talk about this food, we know that this tasty food, we eat food just to take energy from the food. So your mom always says, have some balanced diet, take some nutritious food so that you get good nutrients in your food, and finally you consume it in your body and you get energy also from the food. So basically food has some stored energy in it and we respire to get energy from food. So we need to take energy from food, and here we are going to discuss the process. So when we talk about respiration, basically what is respiration? It is nothing but the food that we are having, we are consuming, that break down into smaller substances in cell. So the breakdown of food takes place in cell and it releases energy. And this process is known as cellular respiration because this whole breakdown takes place in cell, and this is at the very microscopic level. We call it as cellular respiration. So children, let us discuss about the types of respiration. So when we talk about the types of respiration, basically there are two types of respiration. One is aerobic respiration and other is anaerobic respiration. So here in this chapter, now we are going to discuss these two types of respiration in detail with different organisms and cells. So as we have seen that there are two types of respiration, aerobic respiration and anaerobic respiration. So let us discuss both one by one in detail. So first let us talk about aerobic respiration. As the name suggests, aerobic, it consists of air. That means the respiration which takes place in the presence of air, and we call it as aerobic respiration. So basically what will happen, we are having some stored food which has some stored energy. This stored food get break down and it gives us energy, and if this breakdown of food takes place in the presence of oxygen, we call this respiration as aerobic respiration. So basically the glucose, which is the food produced by plants during photosynthesis process, it decomposes by the process of glycolysis into pyruvate. In the presence of oxygen, it forms three important byproducts: carbon dioxide, water and energy. So this is how we get energy from the breakdown of food, and if this process takes place in the presence of oxygen, in the presence of air, we call it as aerobic respiration. So we can say that when breakdown of this food, here glucose, occurs with the help of oxygen, we call it as aerobic respiration. So how we can write the reaction? Glucose, which is the food present in plants, with the help of oxygen, it changes into three forms: carbon dioxide, water and energy. So this is how we get energy by this process, and since it takes place in the presence of oxygen, we call it as aerobic respiration. Now let us discuss about another point, that is anaerobic respiration. And anaerobic means N air, means no air. Presence of oxygen is not there. That means when the breakdown of glucose or any food product takes place in the absence of oxygen, that process is known as anaerobic respiration. So basically food can also be broken down even in the absence of oxygen without using oxygen, and we call that respiration as anaerobic respiration. And in this case, we have carbon dioxide with ethanol and energy. So here we are having some different examples, side products or byproducts which are formed in this respiration. So we have seen aerobic respiration, we have seen anaerobic respiration. So aerobic respiration takes place in the presence of air, or oxygen. Anaerobic respiration takes place in the absence of oxygen or sometimes in very limited supply of oxygen. Now let us see an example, and here we talk about yeast. We have discussed this yeast in previous chapters also, which is a single celled organism. And this yeast, my dear students, this yeast respire anaerobically. That means the mode of respiration in yeast is anaerobic respiration. That means it respires in the absence of oxygen and it produces alcohol. And thus this yeast is used to make wine and beer, which contains as an important constituent as alcohol. So here we have seen an example of yeast which respire anaerobically and produce alcohol as a constituent, which is used in making wine and beer. Let us discuss our muscles. When we talk about our muscles, it has various uses. Like it is used in playing, it is used in doing exercise, it is used in skipping, it is used in running. Our muscles are very important even for our movement, even for doing some physical activity. So do you know how muscles respire? Let us discuss. So when we talk about muscle cells, we observe that the muscle cell respire via anaerobic respiration. That means the mode of respiration in muscle cells, it takes place in the absence of oxygen, and thus we call it as anaerobic respiration. So basically anaerobic respiration, it takes place in muscles so as to fulfill the demand of energy. Quick demand of energy can be done during exercise when we need large amount of energy. Then that case, if oxygen is limited, if the supply of oxygen is limited, then in muscle cells we may have anaerobic respiration also. So what is the reaction that takes place? In that reaction, we observe that the glucose, which is in the form of food present in muscles, get decompose in muscle cells anaerobically, means in absence of oxygen, and it finally produces lactic acid and energy. So in our muscle cells, we observe that the byproduct is lactic acid and energy. Whereas we have seen in yeast, we get ethanol, we get alcohol as a main constituent. But here we are having this lactic acid. So though they respire anaerobically also in muscle cells, so we have the production of lactic acid, and this lactic acid is very harmful because it causes this muscle cramp, which is very painful, and it can be, we get relief. This muscle cramp is formed because of lactic acid that gets formed during anaerobic respiration and get deposited somewhere in the muscles. That causes muscle cramp or spasm in the body, and we get relief during massage or by taking hot water bath, so that this lactic acid get dissolved on heat treatment or on massaging the body where the muscle cramp is there, and we get relief.
To watch the complete video, download the Upbind educational app from Play Store and App Store.